Hey folks, my name's Elaine and I'm from the peaceful and mercantile barony of St. Florian de la Riviere, and today I wanted to talk to you about how I approach fighting a polearm user. Now polearms are dangerous at both ends and crafty in the middle, so if you're going to fight one you need to go in with a good plan. Now before we get into some of the specifics of this, I want to give you a couple of caveats. First off, this is only what works for me. Please go and seek other people's advice, find out how they do it, and then figure out what works best for you. Second of all, this does only apply to polearms, so glaives, axes, halberds, that sort of thing. It can work against some less experienced two-handed sword fighters, but the more experienced ones will chew you up if you try this. And thirdly, caveat about equipment. I'm using a sword and a center grip oval shield. If your equipment is radically different in either shield size or whether it's strapped or something along those lines, obviously this will change how that applies for you. Now with that out of the way, let's go through some of the specifics of how I approach fighting a polearm. So to my way of thinking, there are 3 stages to every engagement with a polearm. First of all, there's surviving the polearm's range. So this is when the polearm can hit you, but you can't hit them. Second of all, you have to survive your range, so when you can both hit each other. Third, there's death, hopefully your opponent's. Now, ideally, every fight with a polearm would progress in that order. It rarely ever happens, but for the purposes of this, we're going to go through it in that order. So first, let's have a look at surviving the polearm's range. So the first part of surviving the glaive's range is having a solid starting guard. For me, that's having my shield flat across my body to provide as much cover as possible, and my sword covering my head, basket hilt up, tipped down, with my arm and elbow tucked in. The next thing is how you block. At this range, they're likely to throw a couple of thrusts as you come in, so you should ideally catch these on your shield and deflect them offline, or you can also use your sword and basket hilt to send them off as well. As you close in, they may throw some chops at you, so you need to be able to block these without compromising your body defense. If it is at your body, use your shield and a small movement and get it back into position. If it is at your head, your hand needs to be able to move as a windscreen wiper, both forward and backwards to cover the deep shots or side to side to cover the shallow ones. As a general rule, everything should be small movements that you can easily recover from. And if you do block a chop, block it out from your head a little bit. That is, move your sword further away from you to account for the extra power, or if it's an axe or a halberd, to account for the head. The next part of surviving the glaive's range is how you actually get close enough to try and hit them. You want to do this fast enough so that they can't get away from you, but not so fast you can't react to any changes. But you also don't want to approach so slowly that they can easily keep the distance between you and take some easy shots. So don't walk, don't run, but approach with unrelenting purpose. The other part of how you approach is the route you take. You don't want to come in on a straight line as it gives them too many easy angles. I like to come in on a slight curve, keeping my shield between myself and my opponent in something I like to call the steady banana. This helps shepherd them in one direction, making it slightly harder for them to change directions suddenly, as well as keeping me reasonably well protected. At this point, you should have a pretty good idea of where your opponent is, either through being able to feel contact with their weapon, or visually by looking at their feet or body positioning. And depending on the length of your opponent's weapon, you should soon be in your own range. Congratulations, you've survived the glaive's range. Now you need to survive yours. Once you're inside that initial point, which is past their thrusting tip and can hit your opponent, don't. If you're still at long range for you, your opponent can still hit you. Remember, a polearm will generally try to regain range and reset, or move their hands up on their weapon to allow them to fight at a closer range. Even when you're at a comfy range for you, don't start throwing yet. I like to get much closer to my opponent and make them feel nervous. So I define that range as the point where my opponent can't throw and is only defending. Their glaive is usually vertical at this point to try and block. During this, you'll still want to maintain some contact to have a feel for where your opponent and their weapon is. Shield contact, sword contact, something, as long as you know where they are and can react to any changes in direction or speed. Remember, they'll be wanting to disengage at this point and get out alive. We don't want to let them do that. Now you're in nice and close, you've put in the hard work, and you want to finish the fight. So how do you do that? We want to throw logical blows that are hard to defend against. So generally a block is strongest when it's at 90 degrees to the shot that's coming in. So if they have their weapon vertical, we want to throw around it or parallel to it. So no flat snaps and no straight offhands. In terms of the shots we're looking at, I want to be throwing wraps, Molinets, potentially some big deep offsides, anything that's going to be hard to block with their very skinny shield. As a backup plan, you can take their legs to cut down on their movement. Just remember you might need to reset to the long range if the fight resets when they drop to their legs. Once you're in range, you want to stay there. If your opponent manages to disengage and gain their range advantage back, we have to rinse, repeat, and give them another chance to kill you. When you're in nice and close, you should be able to see their feet, and using that, along with any pressure against your weapon or shield, judge where they're moving to and stay there. So, stay in close, rain down blows upon them until you hear good. And that's all there is to it. Now, you know everything I know about how to fight a polearm. Just going through a real quick recap. Number 1, survive their range. Go in with a solid defense and stay calm. Number 2, survive your range. Don't throw too early. Number 3, death. Stay on top of them and keep throwing shots until they say good. I'm more than happy to have a chat about anything that's come up in this video, so if you do have any questions, please let me know. And until next time, I'll catch you later.